I'm Rebecca, 34 years old, and I've always known my sister Natalie could be selfish, but I never thought she'd try to drug me. At her 5th anniversary party, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and fake smiles, I watched her slip white powder into my champagne when she thought no one was looking. In that split second, I made a decision that would shatter her perfect life. I quietly switched glasses with Vincent, her husband. The look on her face when he took that first sip told me everything. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how one glass switch exposed years of betrayal that had been hiding behind family photos. Growing up with Natalie, who's 2 years younger than me, was like living with a shadow that desperately wanted to be the person instead of the silhouette. Our childhood home in suburban Chicago had plenty of room for both of us to thrive, but Natalie never saw it that way. From her perspective, everything was a competition I wasn't even aware we were having. The first time I recognized this pattern was in 6th grade, when I spent weeks perfecting my science project about solar energy. The night before the fair, I went to bed excited and nervous. When I woke up, I found my solar panels cracked and the display board water damaged. Natalie claimed our dog knocked it over, but there was no mud on the board, just water splatter. Mom believed her explanation without question. "Rebecca, you should have put it somewhere safer," my mother Diana said, helping me salvage what we could. I noticed Natalie watching from the doorway, a slight smile playing on her lips when Mom wasn't looking. In high school, the competition intensified. Freshman year, I developed my own style, vintage band tees paired with my grandmother's brooches. By sophomore year, Natalie had raided my closet and started wearing nearly identical outfits. When I changed to sundresses and combat boots, within weeks, so did she. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, my father Warren would say, never understanding the invasion I felt with each copied outfit or hairstyle. The friends I made became her targets too. She'd insert herself into our gatherings, slowly winning them over with exaggerated stories and carefully planned, spontaneous adventures that always somehow made me look uptight by comparison. The worst betrayal came senior year when she began dating Thomas, my ex-boyfriend of 2 years. We had broken up amicably 3 months prior, but the unspoken rule about siblings dating exes didn't seem to apply to Natalie. When I confronted her, she batted her eyelashes innocently. "You don't still like him, do you? You broke up with him, Becca." "I can't help who I fall for," she said, using the nicknames she knew I hated. Our family dynamics only reinforced her behavior. My mother Diana consistently made excuses for Natalie's actions. "She just looks up to you," or "she's still finding herself," she would say, dismissing any hurt I expressed. My father Warren maintained neutrality that functioned as silent approval. "I'm not getting involved in girl drama," became his mantra, washing his hands of responsibility while simultaneously allowing the behavior to continue. Extended family noticed. Aunt Lillian once pulled me aside at Thanksgiving when I was 20 and whispered, "You're a saint for putting up with her." I would have lost my mind by now. But nobody ever intervened, creating an environment where Natalie's manipulation thrived unchecked. I channeled my energy into education and career, earning a marketing degree and MBA, then steadily climbing to my current executive position at a digital advertising firm. My professional accomplishments brought recognition, industry awards, speaking engagements, a comfortable salary. All things that seemed to intensify Natalie's resentment. 2 years ago, I met Ethan at an advertising conference in Boston. He was charming, attentive, and seemingly impressed by my career rather than intimidated. Our relationship progressed steadily. Weekend trips, meeting friends, discussing future plans that aligned. Now I can see the red flags I ignored: his excessive interest in my sister's lavish lifestyle, the questions about my family connections, the way his eyes lingered on Natalie when she entered a room during family gatherings. Natalie's life took a different path. She dropped out of college after 1 semester, claiming it was stifling her creativity, and pursued modeling with moderate success. At a charity fashion show 4 years ago, she met Vincent Armstrong, heir to a commercial real estate empire. Their whirlwind romance culminated in an extravagant wedding that dominated her social media for months. Their marriage appeared perfect online: exotic vacations, designer wardrobes, their newly renovated mansion in the suburbs. The carefully curated Instagram posts never showed Vincent's increasing work stress, Natalie's shopping addiction, or the arguments neighbors occasionally overheard. They maintained the facade of perfect happiness, while cracks formed beneath the surface, invisible to their thousands of followers, but increasingly apparent to those who knew them well. Despite our history, I maintained a cordial relationship with my sister. Family gatherings, holiday celebrations, occasional lunch dates, I played my role in the performance of sisterly affection. I believed that adulthood might have mellowed her competitive nature. I was wrong. The invitation to Natalie and Vincent's 5th anniversary party arrived 6 weeks beforehand, thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering, demanding formal attire and no children. The envelope contained a smaller card with a personalized note. "Rebecca, I need your help making this perfect. Come early? Love, Nat." The calculated warmth was typical Natalie, affection always tied to something she needed. Their mansion sprawled across 2 acres in an exclusive gated community. When I arrived the morning of the party, a team of florists was transforming the already impressive foyer into something from a fairy tale. White roses and orchids cascaded from ceiling installations, while gold accents caught the light from crystal chandeliers. A professional photographer wandered through, documenting every perfect detail for what would undoubtedly become an elaborate social media showcase. Finally, Natalie exclaimed when she spotted me. She air-kissed both my cheeks, careful not to disturb her professionally applied makeup. "The caterers are being impossible about the champagne fountain placement. Can you handle them while I finish with the florist? You've always been better at being firm without seeming bitchy." Despite spending the next 3 hours resolving vendor issues, arranging seating charts, and setting up elaborate photo opportunities throughout the property, nothing I did seemed to meet Natalie's standards. "The rose wall needs to be angled toward the natural light, Rebecca," she critiqued, barely glancing at my work. "And these escort cards are all wrong." I specifically said calligraphy, not printed names. "These are calligraphy," I pointed out. "I watched the artist create each one yesterday." She sighed dramatically. "Well, they look printed. We'll have to make do, I guess." By 4 o'clock, guests began arriving. Vincent's business associates dominated one side of the expansive back garden, their conversations punctuated with terms like market volatility and leveraged positions. I overheard fragments that suggested Vincent's company might be facing financial difficulties. Armstrong Properties is overextended in the downtown development, a gray-haired man in an expensive suit muttered to his companion. Vincent's father would never have approved such risky investments. They fell silent when they noticed me nearby, switching to compliments about the lovely party and stunning property. Natalie's friend Heather hovered near the bar, already on her second martini before dinner was served. When our eyes met, she smiled too widely and made her way over. "Rebecca, don't you look nice?" she said, her gaze traveling dismissively over my navy blue cocktail dress. "Natalie mentioned you're still with that advertising guy. Evan, was it?" "Ethan," I corrected. "Almost 2 years now." "How sweet," she replied, her tone suggesting anything but. "You know, I saw him earlier, chatting very intensely with Natalie by the pool house. Such a deep conversation." She wandered away before I could respond, leaving her insinuation hanging in the air. Throughout the evening, I noticed peculiar behaviors that initially seemed disconnected. Natalie checked my location frequently, appearing suddenly whenever I moved to a new area of the party. Ethan disappeared periodically, offering weak excuses about checking work emails or taking important calls. Each time he returned, his eyes would find Natalie before seeking me out. Vincent appeared increasingly stressed as the night progressed. He maintained a polite facade while drinking heavily, his knuckles white around his champagne flute. When Natalie approached him, his smile never reached his eyes. Conversations stopped abruptly when I approached groups. I caught fragments, making sure she doesn't suspect anything, and tonight's the perfect opportunity, before topics change to weather and real estate prices. In the kitchen, retrieving more ice for the bar, I overheard Natalie and Vincent in a heated exchange. "Not tonight, Nat," Vincent hissed. "Whatever you're planning, just don't." "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied coolly. "It's our anniversary. Try acting happy for the photos, at least." They separated instantly when they realized I was there, Natalie's expression transforming into practiced joy so quickly it was unsettling. Later, seeking fresh air in the garden, I spotted Ethan partially hidden behind a decorative hedge, his phone pressed to his ear. "Everything's set," he whispered urgently. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. After midnight, when everyone's..." He saw me and immediately ended the call. "Work emergency," he explained, slipping his phone into his pocket. "The Singapore client is having website issues." He kissed my cheek distractedly, his cologne mingling with a perfume I recognized as Natalie's signature scent. My parents arrived fashionably late, my mother immediately gravitating toward Natalie to exclaim over every detail of the event. My father gave me a genuine hug before being pulled into a conversation with Vincent's father about golf handicaps and stock options. "Your sister has outdone herself," my mother commented when she finally acknowledged my presence. "Such taste. Such vision. The flower arrangements alone must have cost a fortune." "Rebecca helped with those," my father interjected, surprising me with his awareness. "Oh, well, Natalie clearly directed the aesthetic," my mother replied, patting my arm condescendingly. "You are always so practical, Rebecca. It's nice you could assist with the heavy lifting." As midnight approached, the party reached its peak. 100 guests filled the back garden and pool area, the air buzzing with champagne-fueled conversation and laughter that seemed increasingly forced. An elaborate anniversary cake waited on a dedicated table, 5 tiers of white fondant and gold leaf that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The stage was set for the pivotal moment, though I didn't yet realize I would be the one to bring down the curtain on my sister's performance. At 11:30, Natalie clinked a knife against her crystal champagne flute, commanding attention from the gathered guests. "It's almost midnight, the exact time Vincent and I said I do 5 years ago," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed garden. "We'll have a special toast at midnight with vintage champagne Vincent imported from France. Everyone gather at the main terrace in 20 minutes. As guests dispersed to refresh drinks and touch up makeup, Natalie pulled me aside. "I need your help with the toast glasses," she said, leading me to a small anteroom off the main hall where 12 crystal champagne flutes stood on a silver tray. These weren't the standard glasses guests had been using all evening. They were antique baccarat crystal, each worth hundreds of dollars. "These were a wedding gift from Vincent's grandmother," Natalie explained, carefully arranging them. "I've set aside specific glasses for the head table. Yours is this one with a slightly more pronounced etching." She pointed to a glass positioned at the edge of the tray. "Make sure you get this exact one, okay? It's part of the set, symbolizing good fortune." Her insistence struck me as odd, but I nodded agreement. She continued arranging the glasses, explaining precisely where each person would stand during the toast, me to her left, Ethan beside me, Vincent to her right. After helping finalize these arrangements, I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment alone to process the strange undercurrents I'd been feeling all evening. The guest bathroom line was long, so I slipped upstairs to use the master bath, knowing Natalie would be occupied with toast preparations. Finishing more quickly than expected, I headed back downstairs, taking a shortcut through the butler's pantry that connected directly to the anteroom where the special champagne flutes waited. I paused at the doorway when I heard movement inside. Through the crack between door and frame, I saw Natalie alone with the crystal glasses. She glanced furtively over her shoulder before removing a small vial from her clutch. With practiced precision, she tipped white powder into the glass she had specifically designated as mine, swirling it gently until it dissolved completely, leaving no trace in the crystal-clear champagne. My heart pounded so loudly, I feared she might hear it. I retreated silently into the pantry, mind racing. What had she put in my drink? A sedative? Something worse? The calculated nature of the act struck me hardest. The specific glass assignment, the careful arrangement of where everyone would stand, the insistence that I drink from that particular flute. This wasn't impulsive. This was premeditated. Memories flashed through my mind. The science project, stolen friends, the cruel comments disguised as sisterly concern. This was merely the latest in a lifetime pattern, but escalated to a frightening degree. What could justify drugging me at her own anniversary party? I remained hidden until I heard Natalie leave, then cautiously approached the tray of champagne. The glasses looked identical except for subtle variations in the antique crystal patterns. I identified mine by its position and the etching Natalie had pointed out earlier. My options raced through my mind. I could confront her immediately, but her skill at manipulation would likely turn the situation against me. I could simply avoid drinking, but that would only delay whatever she had planned. I could alert Vincent, but without proof, it would be my word against hers. In that moment, my instinct wasn't just to protect myself, but also Vincent, who increasingly seemed like another victim in whatever game Natalie was playing. The solution came when I accidentally bumped a flower arrangement, sending water and roses cascading across the side table. In the commotion of cleaning up, calling for help, grabbing towels, moving furniture, I managed what would change everything. I switched my doctored glass with Vincent's. A momentary doubt flashed through me. Was I overreacting? What if the powder was something innocuous, a joke or prank? But Natalie's secretive behavior, the tensions I'd observed all evening, and our history suggested otherwise. Something significant was planned for tonight, and my instinct said the drugged champagne was part of it. By midnight, guests gathered on the terrace as instructed. Servers circulated with regular champagne, while the special crystal flutes were reserved for the head table. Natalie and Vincent, myself and Ethan, and both sets of parents. Vincent stepped forward to offer the anniversary toast, looking surprisingly composed given his earlier distress. 5 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman in the room, he began, his voice steady. Our journey hasn't always been easy, but standing here tonight, I'm committed to honesty and loyalty above all else. His eyes lingered on Natalie with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Natalie beamed at the guests, though I noticed her smile tightened when Vincent emphasized honesty. She raised her glass to 5 more years of surprises and adventure. The crystal flutes clinked as we all toasted. I brought my glass to my lips but didn't drink, watching as Vincent took a generous sip from what had been my glass. Across from me, Natalie's expression transformed in slow motion, from smug satisfaction as she watched my glass approach my lips, to dawning horror as she noticed Vincent drinking deeply from his. Our eyes locked across the circle. For the first time in our adult lives, I saw genuine fear in my sister's face. The effects began subtly. 10 minutes after the toast, Vincent loosened his bow tie, complaining about the heat despite the pleasant evening temperature. His speech became slightly slurred, words occasionally running together as he greeted guests. Most attributed this to the numerous drinks he'd consumed throughout the evening, but I knew better. Natalie hovered anxiously nearby, repeatedly offering him water and suggesting they get some air away from the crowd. Vincent brushed off her concerns with increasing irritation. I'm fine, Natalie, he said too loudly. Stop bothering me in front of everyone. It's embarrassing. His filter deteriorated rapidly. When one of his father's business associates approached with congratulations, Vincent responded with unexpected candor. Martin, the man who told my father the downtown project was foolproof, Vincent said, slapping the older man's shoulder too hard. How's that working out for everyone? Oh, wait, we're down 30% and hemorrhaging investors. But hey, congratulations to me, right? The businessman retreated quickly, casting concerned glances back at Vincent. Natalie's smile became increasingly strained as she attempted damage control. Vincent has been working too hard, she explained to shocked guests. The anniversary excitement and champagne hit him all at once. Physical symptoms became impossible to ignore. Vincent's coordination deteriorated. He stumbled against furniture, knocked over drinks, and struggled to maintain his balance. 40 minutes after the toast, The situation reached its climax when Vincent attempted to inspect the anniversary cake and fell forward into it, sending 5 elaborate tears crashing to the floor in a spectacular display of destruction. Collective gasps gave way to uncomfortable silence. Vincent lay amid cake debris and smeared fondant, attempting to stand before sliding back down, his tuxedo covered in white frosting and gold leaf. Oops, he giggled inappropriately, looking more like a college student after a bender than a successful business executive. Guess the cake is served. Natalie's damage control shifted to crisis management. With forced brightness, she announced, "I think it's time to conclude the evening." Vincent obviously celebrated a bit too enthusiastically. As servers helped guide guests toward the exits, Natalie and a security guard practically carried Vincent upstairs. I followed discreetly, Ethan mysteriously absent during the commotion. In the master bedroom, Natalie directed the security guard to place Vincent on the bed before dismissing him. Once alone, I closed the door behind me, confronting my sister as Vincent dozed fitfully. "What did you put in my champagne, Natalie?" I asked quietly. She spun around, momentarily startled by my presence before her features composed into innocent confusion. "What are you talking about?" Vincent clearly had too much to drink. "He's been stressed about work and—" "Stop lying," I interrupted. "I saw you put something in my glass. The one you made sure I would use. The one that somehow ended up with Vincent instead." Her expression flickered between several emotions, shock, anger, calculation, before settling on indignation. "That's absurd. Why would I drug my own sister? You're being paranoid again, Rebecca. This is just like when we were kids, and you accused me of sabotaging your science project. Always making me the villain in your stories." The gaslighting was so familiar it almost worked from muscle memory alone. Almost. The difference is that this time, I watched you do it. I came back early from the bathroom and saw you with the vial. I saw you put the powder in my glass and make sure it dissolved completely. Natalie's careful facade cracked. She glanced nervously at Vincent, who had begun to snore loudly, clearly unconscious rather than merely sleeping. "It was just a mild sedative," she finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing dangerous. You would have just gotten drowsy and needed to sleep it off. I would have taken care of you." "Why?" I demanded. "Why drug me at your anniversary party?" Before she could answer, the bedroom door opened. Ethan entered, stopping short when he saw me. "What's she doing here?" he asked Natalie, not even attempting to hide their obvious connection. "I thought you said she'd be out by now." The final piece clicked into place. The secret of phone calls. The disappearances throughout the night. The strange tension between Natalie and Vincent. "How long?" I asked, looking between them. Neither answered immediately. Vincent stirred on the bed, mumbling incoherently before settling again. 6 months, Natalie finally confessed. "It just happened, Rebecca. We didn't plan it." "We fell in love," Ethan added, having the audacity to look apologetic. "We were going to tell you tonight after the party." Natalie thought it would be easier if you were relaxed. "You mean unconscious," I corrected coldly. "So, what was the plan? Drug me, wait until I pass out, then you two ride off into the sunset together? What about Vincent?" "He suspected something," Natalie said, glancing at her husband. "He hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. We needed to leave tonight, before he got proof. We have tickets to Bali. Ethan already shipped some things ahead." "So this whole anniversary party was what? A goodbye celebration before you abandoned your husband and stole my boyfriend? And drugging me was just a convenient way to prevent me from calling Vincent once you disappeared?" Natalie's eyes filled with tears that I couldn't tell were genuine or performative. "You don't understand, Rebecca. Vincent and I haven't been happy for years. And Ethan, he wasn't right for you. He needs someone who understands his creative ambitions." "Someone like you?" I laughed bitterly. "Just like Thomas in high school? And my friends? And my style? When does it end, Natalie? What part of my life won't you try to take?" The bedroom door crashed open again. Vincent stood swaying in the doorway, his expression surprisingly lucid despite his disheveled appearance. Cake frosting still clung to his tuxedo, but his eyes were clear and focused, with controlled fury. "I heard everything," he said quietly. I wasn't as affected as I let on. Years of building alcohol tolerance has its benefits. He looked at Natalie with cold disappointment. "Drugging your sister, though? That's a new low, even for you." He turned toward the doorway. "Ethan, I presume? I believe we have some business to discuss." Ethan paled visibly. "Look, man, these things happen. People grow apart, fall in love with." "My wife's sister's boyfriend doesn't fall in love with my wife without consequences," Vincent interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "Especially when said boyfriend has been helping my wife's siphon company funds to finance their escape." This revelation stunned me. I looked at Ethan, searching for denial, but found only guilt. "It was just temporary," Ethan stammered. "We were going to pay it back. Natalie said the company could afford it." $2 million is temporary? Vincent laughed without humor. "Tell that to my investors. Tell that to the SEC when they review the wire transfers." Confrontation escalated as we moved downstairs, unaware that not all guests had departed. My parents and several lingering friends witnessed the four-way confrontation that erupted in the main hall. "What's happening?" my mother demanded, looking between us. "Rebecca, what have you done now?" Of course she would assume I was responsible. Some patterns never change. "What I've done," I said clearly, "is expose the truth. Your perfect daughter drugged my champagne so she could run off with my boyfriend tonight. Unfortunately for her, I switched the glasses." Gasps and whispers rippled through the remaining guests. Phones discreetly captured pieces of the unfolding drama despite the no social media request on the invitations. "That's ridiculous," my mother began automatically. "Natalie would never." "It's true, Diana," Vincent interrupted. "I heard the confession myself. Plus, I have financial records and investigator reports confirming their affair." Ethan attempted damage control, spinning a story about mutual unhappiness and finding unexpected connection, but his words fell flat against Vincent's evidence and Natalie's crumbling composure. My father, typically conflict avoidant, surprised everyone by approaching me. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, while my mother focused on consoling an increasingly hysterical Natalie. "I will be," I responded, suddenly exhausted by the decades of this dynamic. As the remnants of the party disintegrated into chaos, Natalie sobbing dramatically, Ethan attempting to justify their betrayal, Vincent making quiet phone calls to his security team and lawyer, I walked out alone into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of relationships built on lies. The drive home passed in a blur. Street lights smeared like watercolors through my tears, but I refused to break down completely until I was safely inside my apartment. I blocked Ethan's number before he could attempt contact, silenced notifications from family members, and poured myself a generous glass of wine that remained untouched as I stared at the wall until sunrise. My apartment felt different, emptier somehow, though nothing physical had changed. Ethan had never moved in, maintaining his own place despite spending most nights with me. Now I noticed the careful separation he'd always maintained. No clothes in my closet, no toiletries in my bathroom beyond a toothbrush. He'd kept his escape route clear all along. By morning, the story had exploded across social media. Guests' surreptitious photos and videos circulated widely, capturing Vincent's cake disaster and hints of the subsequent confrontation. Natalie's carefully curated online persona began crumbling as friends and followers speculated wildly in comment sections. My phone accumulated missed calls and messages. Ethan, from new numbers after realizing he was blocked, Natalie alternating between tearful apologies and accusations, my mother demanding I fix this mess, and surprisingly, Vincent requesting to meet. Work provided no escape. Though colleagues respected my privacy, whispers followed me through hallways. Ethan, who worked for a partner agency, had collaborated with several of my clients, making professional repercussions unavoidable. "Take some time," my boss Cameron suggested gently after catching me crying in the break room. "Family emergencies qualify for personal leave. Everything will be here when you're ready to return." I accepted his offer, arranging 2 weeks away from the office to process everything. The solitude of my apartment quickly became suffocating, so I relocated temporarily to a hotel, needing neutral space untainted by memories. Ethan's attempts at contact grew increasingly desperate. Emails with subject lines evolving from "we need to talk" to "please just read this" to "I know I don't deserve forgiveness" filled my inbox. When digital communication failed, he appeared at my office building, necessitating security intervention. "It wasn't what you think," he insisted in one voicemail. "Natalie manipulated me just like she manipulates everyone. I was going to end it with her that night." Another message contradicted this entirely. "What we had was real, but sometimes you meet someone and everything changes. You deserve someone who loves you completely. That wasn't me, and I'm sorry." Natalie's messages followed a similar pattern of inconsistency, one moment claiming victimhood, the next attacking me for exposing her. "You've always been jealous of me," she texted. "You couldn't stand seeing me happy, so you deliberately ruined my marriage and my reputation." Hours later, "I need my sister. Please talk to me. I'm falling apart, and you're the only one who understands our family." Our family itself fractured along predictable lines. My mother blamed me for the public embarrassment. "You could have handled this privately," she scolded during one of my few answered calls. "Did you have to humiliate your sister in front of everyone we know? What will our friends think?" My father, traditionally conflict avoidant, surprisingly took a stand. "Diana, our daughter was nearly drugged," I overheard him saying during a three-way call. "She could have been hurt. How can you still be defending Natalie?" "She's fragile," my mother insisted. "Rebecca has always been the stronger one. She should have found another way." Extended family holidays were canceled amid the tension. Thanksgiving plans dissolved as relatives chose sides or opted out entirely, unwilling to navigate the emotional minefield our family had become. Friends divided similarly. Some expressed shock and support, others questioned if I had provoked Natalie somehow or suggested I was overreacting to a sister squabble. A few admitted they'd suspected Ethan's infidelity, but hadn't known how to tell me. "He flirted with me at your birthday party last year," my college friend Tara confessed over coffee. "I thought it was just his personality until I saw him leave with one of the waitresses. I should have said something." Throughout this chaotic period, Cameron became an unexpected source of strength. As both my boss and friend, he maintained professional distance while offering practical support, connecting me with his therapist, recommending a lawyer when Ethan's workplace behavior became harassment, checking in with brief texts that required no response. "No pressure to reply," each message began. "Just letting you know there's takeout Thai in the office fridge if you need it," or "Client loved the campaign concept you developed before leaving. Take all the time you need, but know your work matters and we're holding your place." These small kindnesses provided anchor points when everything else seemed to drift. Professional consequences mounted quickly. Ethan lost several clients who had relationships with me, making him increasingly bitter. "You're ruining my career over a personal issue," he wrote in one particularly nasty email. "I expected more professionalism from you." Natalie's carefully cultivated influencer partnerships began canceling. Her sponsored content deals with luxury brands, built on her image as one half of a perfect power couple, disappeared overnight. Vincent's public relations team controlled the narrative skillfully, positioning him as the wronged husband focusing on business during a difficult personal time. Armstrong Properties announces new development despite executives' personal challenges, read one sympathetic business article, detailing Vincent's professional resilience without directly mentioning the scandal. Vincent himself maintained minimal contact, though his lawyer reached out regarding potential testimony if his divorce proceedings became contentious. "Mr. Armstrong appreciates your discretion and cooperation during this difficult time," the formal email stated. "He considers you an unwitting victim in this situation and wishes to minimize any additional distress to all innocent parties." As weeks passed, the immediate crisis faded into a different kind of pain, the slow, grinding work of rebuilding a life fundamentally altered by betrayal. I began therapy, learning vocabulary for patterns I'd experienced but never named: gaslighting, triangulation, chronic undermining. Your sister displays classic signs of pathological envy, my therapist, Dr. Harper, explained. Her sense of self appears deeply connected to obtaining what you have, rather than developing her own identity. But why? I asked during one session. Our parents gave her everything. She was always the favorite. Sometimes the favorite status creates its own pressure, Dr. Harper suggested. The expectation to maintain that position becomes overwhelming. Rather than risk failure on her own terms, it becomes easier to simply appropriate your successes. These insights provided context but not comfort. Understanding the psychology behind Natalie's behavior didn't erase the hurt or rebuild trust. That would require something more difficult than knowledge. It would require confrontation with the full truth, no matter how painful. After 6 weeks of limited contact with family, I agreed to meet Natalie at a cafe halfway between our homes. Cameron helped me prepare emotionally the night before, role-playing potential conversations and establishing clear boundaries. You don't owe her forgiveness, he reminded me. You're going to get information and clarity, not to make her feel better. I arrived early, securing a corner table with good sight lines to the entrance. When Natalie walked in 15 minutes late, I barely recognized her. Always meticulous about appearance, she now wore minimal makeup, her hair pulled back simply. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes hanging loosely on her frame. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, sliding into the chair across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. Awkward silence stretched between us as she stirred sugar into her coffee with shaking hands. "I prepared what I wanted to say," she finally began, pulling a folded paper from her purse. "I've been working on it with my therapist." The mention of therapy surprised me. Natalie had always dismissed psychology as excuse-making for weak people. She unfolded the paper, but didn't read directly from it.
"I'm sorry, Rebecca."
Not just for what happened at the anniversary party, but for a lifetime of taking from you. There's no excuse for what I did. It was wrong, dangerous, and a betrayal of everything sisters should be to each other. Her apologies sounded rehearsed but sincere. I remained silent, waiting for the qualification that typically followed Natalie's apologies, but that would shift responsibility elsewhere. It didn't come. Instead, she continued, "I've been seeing a psychiatrist. He thinks I have a personality disorder that's gone untreated my whole life. It doesn't excuse what I've done, but it helps me understand why I couldn't stop comparing myself to you and wanting what you had." "Why me?" I finally asked. "You had everything growing up. Mom's attention, Dad's indulgence, the better room, more expensive clothes. What was so special about my life that you needed to take it too?" Natalie looked genuinely confused. "You really don't know? You were always so complete. You knew who you were. You didn't need anyone's approval. I've spent my entire life feeling like I'm one mistake away from everyone realizing I'm worthless." This perspective was so contrary to my experience that I struggled to reconcile it with our shared history. "That doesn't explain trying to drug me," I said firmly. "No, it doesn't," she agreed, wiping away tears. That night, I was desperate. Vincent had hired an investigator. He was gathering evidence for divorce. Ethan convinced me we needed to leave immediately, and I panicked. The idea was his, but I went along with it. The powder was just Ambien crushed up. You would have gotten sleepy and needed to lie down. We would have left while you were asleep. As our conversation continued, deeper revelations emerged. Natalie confessed to sabotages I hadn't even been aware of, contacting my college professor to question the originality of my application essay, spreading rumors among mutual friends that I'd made dismissive comments about them, attempting to seduce not just Thomas, but 2 other boyfriends who had rejected her advances. It never made me feel better, she admitted. Each time, I hated myself more, but couldn't stop. It was like an addiction, momentary relief followed by deeper shame, requiring a bigger hit next time. I struggled to process the scope of manipulation she described. My entire understanding of our relationship shifted, revealing a distorted competition I hadn't even known I was participating in. "What about Ethan?" I asked. "Was he just another thing to take from me?" Natalie hesitated. Initially, maybe. He flirted with me at your housewarming party, and I enjoyed the attention. But it became something else. He understood me, or I thought he did. Now I realize he was just using me to access Vincent's connections and money. 2 days later, I met Vincent for lunch at his private club. Unlike Natalie, he appeared physically unchanged by recent events, though subtle differences emerged during conversation. Increased directness, less concern with appearances, occasional flashes of dark humor. The private investigator uncovered more than the affair, he explained, showing me financial records on his tablet. Natalie and Ethan had been siphoning funds from company accounts for months. Nearly $2 million transferred through a complex series of transactions that Ethan helped design. Did you suspect them before hiring the investigator? I asked. I suspected something, Vincent acknowledged. Natalie's spending increased dramatically 6 months ago, even by her standards. And she began asking detailed questions about business operations she'd never cared about before. The investigator confirmed my suspicions and discovered the affair simultaneously. He took a sip of water before adding, "The irony is, if you hadn't switched those glasses, they might have succeeded." The plan was apparently for me to find a note the next day after they'd already left the country. By then, they would have been untraceable. These conversations forced me to confront my own role in enabling decades of manipulation. My desire for family harmony had created space for Natalie's behavior to flourish unchallenged. My willingness to accept peace over accountability had established patterns that escalated to dangerous levels. In therapy, I explored these painful realizations. I've been confusing forgiveness with permission, I told Dr. Harper. I thought being the bigger person meant letting things go, but I was really teaching Natalie that her behavior had no consequences. Boundaries aren't punishment, Dr. Harper reminded me. They're protection for both of you. Clear boundaries might have actually helped Natalie develop healthier relationships. With this understanding, I initiated difficult conversations with my parents. My mother initially resisted, clinging to her narrative of Natalie as the fragile daughter needing protection. She made a mistake, my mother insisted during a tense dinner. Everyone deserves forgiveness. Drugging someone isn't a mistake, I countered firmly. It's a crime. And forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened or allowing the same patterns to continue. My father, witnessing my newfound assertiveness, finally acknowledged his role in our dysfunctional family system. I should have stepped in years ago, he admitted. I thought staying neutral was peaceful, but it just enabled problems to grow. Setting boundaries proved challenging but necessary. I made clear to my parents that my relationship with Natalie would require significant changes before any reconciliation could be considered. I distanced myself from friends who had minimized the severity of what happened or suggested I share blame for the situation. Most painfully, I had to acknowledge the red flags with Ethan I'd willfully ignored, his excessive interest in my family's connections, his strategic career moves leveraging my relationships, his subtle undermining comments disguised as jokes. You weren't stupid for not seeing it, Cameron assured me during a weekend hike that had become part of my healing routine. Manipulative people target kind, trusting individuals precisely because they give others the benefit of the doubt. This perspective helped me move from self-recrimination toward self-protection, recognizing that my capacity for trust was a strength, even if it had been exploited. 6 months after the anniversary party disaster, my life had transformed in ways both visible and invisible. I moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, donated furniture with attached memories, and adopted a rescue cat named Oliver, who greeted me enthusiastically each evening. My wardrobe evolved toward bolder colors and styles I'd previously avoided for fear of Natalie's inevitable copying. Professional changes followed personal ones. Upon returning from leave, I accepted a promotion that required more travel but offered creative control over major campaigns. My confidence in client presentations grew as I learned to trust my instincts without second-guessing or deferring unnecessarily. My healing journey progressed unevenly but steadily. Therapy sessions helped identify triggers and develop healthier response patterns. I joined a support group for survivors of family betrayal, finding community among others navigating similar terrain. Through their stories, I recognized both the uniqueness of my situation and the universal aspects of recovery from broken trust. Healing isn't linear became our group's unofficial mantra, acknowledging the frustrating reality of progress followed by unexpected setbacks. Days of strength and clarity alternated with moments when a song or scent would transport me back to the pain, leaving me temporarily breathless with grief for relationships lost. I educated myself about family dynamics through books and workshops, recognizing patterns that had seemed normal only because of their familiarity. With this knowledge came the difficult work of establishing and maintaining boundaries with my parents, who struggled adjusting to our changing relationship. "I'm not doing this to punish anyone," I explained during a boundary conversation with my mother. "I'm creating space to build something healthier." Over time, my father became an unexpected ally in this process, reading the same books I recommended and attending family therapy sessions with genuine commitment to change. My mother's progress came more slowly, her identity so entwined with maintaining family harmony at any cost that she initially perceived boundaries as rejection. "I just want my family back together," she would say tearfully. "We can be together," I would respond, but not in the same dysfunctional ways as before. Running errands one Saturday morning, I unexpectedly encountered Vincent at a local coffee shop. Initial awkwardness gave way to genuine conversation as we found ourselves sharing a table during the weekend rush. "The divorce was finalized last month," he mentioned, stirring his Americano. "The financial aspects were complicated, but the relationship part was surprisingly straightforward once everything was exposed." He looked healthier than at our last meeting, more relaxed, the perpetual tension around his eyes replaced by subtle laugh lines. He had refocused his business on smaller, sustainable projects rather than the high-risk investments that had created so much stress. "Losing that money actually forced me to rebuild the business according to my values, not my father's expectations," he explained. In a weird way, discovering the embezzlement was clarifying. When I asked about Natalie, he shared what little he knew from legal communications. "She's sold most of her designer things to repay some of what she took. She's living in a regular apartment now, working an actual job in retail. Her lawyer says she's committed to making financial amends." He hesitated before adding, "I hated her for a while. Still do sometimes. But mostly I'm grateful the truth came out before we had children or I invested more years in a fundamentally dishonest relationship." His perspective resonated with my own evolving feelings. The white-hot anger had gradually transformed into something more complex: sadness for what might have been, gratitude for what was revealed, determination to create something better moving forward. "What about Ethan?" Vincent asked. "Have you heard anything?" I shook my head. "He sent a final email about 3 months ago, then nothing. I heard he moved to Chicago for a job at a smaller agency." What I didn't mention was that Cameron and I had cautiously begun dating after months of friendship. Unlike the whirlwind intensity with Ethan, our relationship developed slowly, built on genuine understanding and respect that predated romantic interest. We maintained professional boundaries at work while exploring personal connection outside the office. Information about Natalie came primarily through my parents. According to them, she continued therapy, working specifically on identity issues and emotional regulation. She had found a church community that provided structure and support without the social media validation she'd previously craved. "She asks about you," my mother reported during one of our now monthly dinners. "She doesn't expect forgiveness, but wants you to know she's doing the work." I acknowledged this information without committing to reunion. My own healing remained the priority, and rushing reconciliation would serve neither of us. One Tuesday evening, as Oliver purred on my lap while I reviewed campaign materials, my phone buzzed with a text from an unrecognized number. "Rebecca, it's Natalie. I got a new phone." No pressure to respond, but I'm 6 months into a recovery program and working step 9, making amends. "I'd like to meet if you're ever willing. On your terms, your timeline." I stared at the message for a long time, emotions cycling through me, caution, curiosity, the faint stirring of possibility. I didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to sit with the request, discussing it with Dr. Harper and Cameron before making any decision. The truth is, I don't know if reconciliation with Natalie is possible or even desirable. What I do know is that I'm no longer defined by her actions or our history. The person I've become through this painful journey is stronger, clearer, and more authentically myself than I've ever been. The anniversary party revealed ugly truths, but living honestly with difficult realities has proven far healthier than maintaining beautiful illusions. I've learned that family bonds can be simultaneously precious and dangerous, that love doesn't guarantee safety, and that sometimes the most loving action is creating distance. Most importantly, I've discovered that my worth never depended on Natalie's validation, my parents' protection, or a partner's fidelity. It existed within me all along, waiting to be recognized and honored through the choices I make each day. As I consider Natalie's text, I realize I'm not rushing toward either reconciliation or permanent estrangement. Instead, I'm standing firmly in my own truth, ready to face whatever comes next on my own terms. Perhaps that's the greatest victory, not over my sister, but over the patterns that held us both captive for so long. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision about maintaining or cutting ties with family members who've betrayed your trust? What boundaries did you set to protect yourself while leaving room for possible healing? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most courageous act isn't forgiving others, but learning to trust yourself again after betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey.